Hey guys, welcome to Solo ReacTalk. Today I'm going to be reacting to the deadly dry run for World War II, the Spanish Civil War between two wars, 1939, part 1 of 3 by TimeGhostHistory. If you want to check out my previous reactions to the other videos on between two wars, remember the playlist card is going to be at the top. Just click on it and you'll be able to access them. If you want to check out the original video as well as TimeGhostHistory's YouTube channel, the links are in the description below. Okay, let's start. 3, 2, 1, go.
On April 1st, 1939, Pope Pius XII telegrams a Spanish general telling him, "With heart uplifted to the Lord, we sincerely give thanks along with your excellency for this long-desired Catholic victory." He is congratulating Francisco Franco on his victory in the Spanish Civil War, a conflict that has lasted nearly 1,000 days and seen dehumanization of adversaries, terror bombing, and desperate last stands. It has been a brutal conflict and will go down in history as a prelude for the coming global war in 1939. Welcome to Between Two Wars, a chronological summary of the interwar years, covering all facets of life, the uncertainty, hedonism, and euphoria, and ultimately humanity's descent into the darkness of the Second World War. I'm Indy Nidell. In our video on the Second Spanish Republic, we saw how Spain is already in a state of quasi-civil war before open hostilities are declared. Revolutionary workers battle it out in the streets against monarchists, fascists, and conservatives, and armed insurrections and violent strikes are a fact of life. In February 1936, a Popular Front coalition of liberal and left-wing parties gains power in the Cortes, the Spanish parliament. But this causes panic among right-wingers who step up their violence in fear of a communist takeover. With rumors of a military coup, the government demotes suspect officers or sends them to the far reaches of Spain. Francisco Franco, the much-admired general who viciously suppressed an attempted revolution in 1934, is sent to the Canary Islands, and Emilio Mola, Director General of Security and veteran of Spain's colonial wars, is transferred to Pamplona. The government are not wrong in its suspicions.
The fact that they're able to send these potential, suspects for a coup to far-flung areas within their, their country's domain is very odd, really. Usually nowadays people are sent to prison, or they are assassinated, or they are somehow shunned from the public in some sort of way, using electronical devices and stuff like that. You don't really hear of political threats being sent out to an island, sent out to an island to go live out the rest of their lives on that island, or to some far off remote corner of the country. That's interesting, really.
Even before those generals are sent away, some are planning on military rebellion. On March 8, 1936, prominent military men, including Franco and Mola, meet in Madrid to agree on a general rising to reestablish internal order and neutralize the presumed communist threat. They agree that General Sanjurjo, well-respected monarchist general, will head the military junta. But with Sanjurjo in exile in Portugal after his failed coup attempt in 1932, and Franco seemingly relatively uncommitted, it falls to Mola to organize things. By the end of June, plans are looking more and more concrete. Commanding generals have been assigned for each district, and it is agreed that it will happen at some point in mid-July. There is a significant problem, however. Mola has support from the Falange, the country's primary fascist movement, and the Carlists, the reactionary and devout Catholics committed to restoring a branch of the House of Bourbon. But little from the Spanish military itself. Franco is refusing to definitely commit, and most senior generals are not involved at all. And the government seems pretty confident nothing will happen, despite consistent reports that something will. In June, the Prime Minister Santiago Casares Quiroga waves off such warnings from a fellow politician as fantasies of the male menopause. He also publicly states his
fantasies of the male menopause.
his confidence in General Mola and refuses to arm the workers to protect against a military rising. But his confidence in Mullah is a mistake, as Mullah is determined to carry out a rising, and it will take the murder of just one person to fix the date. On July 12th, Jose del Castillo, a lieutenant in the police and a known socialist, is shot dead in Madrid by Falangist gunmen. His comrades swear vengeance. That night, a group of them go to the house of Jose Calvo Sotelo, the leading anti-Republican politician in the Cortes, and, on the pretext of arresting him, take him from his home, murder him, and dump his body in a public morgue. The right is outraged, declaring the murder to be government-sanctioned.
And this is how the Civil War begins. They just needed, people to be killed. Well, in particular, one person. And then the floodgates open. Wow.
Killing of Calvo Sotelo convinces Mullah to seize the moment. It also means Franco finally pledges his support. Upon hearing the news, he reportedly declares, "The fatherland now has another martyr. We cannot wait any longer," and agrees to board a plane to Spanish Morocco.
But the fatherland is going to have many more martyrs. As this civil war continues between these two factions, it's just going to be a mess, really.
The coup is set to begin before he even arrives. First in Morocco on July 17th, where the rebels are assured of victory, and then the mainland the next day. As expected, Morocco falls quickly, but the fighting on the mainland is brutal. Sevilla faces heavy shelling, and once the city falls, the resultant repression leaves so many bodies in the streets that they have to be stacked against walls so patrol cars can move through the city. Similar violence is seen in Madrid and Barcelona, where workers fight back against insurgent Falangist, Carlist, and military forces, making the cities the symbols of popular resistance. By the end of July, Spain is split in two. A third of the country is now nationalist Spain and under the command of the insurgents. This includes almost all of the north and northwest, the Canary and Balearic Isles, and large areas of Extremadura and Andalusia. The rest, including 5 of Spain's 7 largest cities, is Republican Spain, under the control of the Popular Front government. But Republican Spain is by no means safe from regime change. Almost as soon as the coup happens, revolutionary leaders call on the government to arm the workers. Santiago Casares Quiroga refuses, but he resigns on the night of July 18th. He is replaced by Jose Giral on the 19th, who...
So the nationalists have Madrid, and the Republic has got Barcelona. These 2 major cities in Spain. Okay.
sanctions what is now happening anyway, and Spain's workers are now armed. By this point, government authority has already shrunk enormously, and there has been a complete breakdown of law and order across the country. It leads to a profound revolution across the Republican zone, as leftists are finally able to take power. Coming under the control of anarchists, Barcelona sees the most radical changes. Everything from factories to farms to luxury hotels, everything is collectivized. Rent and utilities come under the control of neighborhood committees, and mansions are converted into schools and hospitals. Madrid also sees a surge of union collectivization, and a corresponding revolution sweeps through rural areas. Some village communities abolish money for local purposes altogether and take full control of the production and the sale of produce.
Okay. Let's see how long this lasts.
With this revolution comes extreme levels of terror. Revolutionary squads roam the cities, hunting down suspected fascists. Many are taken to self-appointed purge committees, but others are simply just shot then and there. Presumed political enemies are kidnapped in stolen cars and killed while being raced through the streets. Militia raid local jails and execute people involved with the coup en masse. The Catholic clergy are the most visible class enemies. Hundreds, even thousands, are killed, while religious artifacts are burned and churches ransacked. The constant language of cleansing and sanctifying Spain of its enemies is a recurrent theme on both sides, though. It means that adversaries can be dehumanized and killed without mercy. And in nationalist Spain, this is official policy. But instead of Class enemies, it is anyone who might organize against them. Mayors, governors, union leaders, and Popular Front politicians are murdered across Spain. Torture is systematic for the ones lucky enough to escape death. And loads of those sentenced to imprisonment are taken from their cells each night by Falangist death squads shot on the outskirts of town. The number of people executed by both sides throughout the whole war will be a point of contention even into the 21st century. A conservative estimate is between 120 and 150,000, which is 0.5% of the total Spanish population. The vast majority of these will happen in the summer and autumn of 1936. By the end of September, around 90% of the clergy killed over the whole war by Republican forces, and 70% of victims of nationalist repression will already have died. And with the enormous bloodshed, the eyes of the world are increasingly focused on the Iberian Peninsula. Franco actually ensures this from the start. The rebels have just under half of the total 250,000 soldiers and armed police in all of Spain. Pretty evenly matched. But they also have the loyalty of the Army of Africa, garrisoned in Spanish Morocco, and the most professional fighting force Spain has. That army boasts the elite troops of the Spanish Legion, made up mostly of Spaniards, but also containing foreign volunteers and Moroccan regulares, indigenous Moroccans who have volunteered to fight for Spain. Both units...
Which Spain? The Republican Spain or the national Spain? Which one are they fighting for here?
venerate violence. The Legion's motto is Viva la Muerte, long live death. And they are fiercely loyal to their officers.
Long live death. Okay.
Landing in Morocco on July 19th, Franco has command over these fighters. The only problem is that most of the Spanish Navy is loyal to the Republic, so they've blockaded the Mediterranean. To get his army to the mainland, Franco appeals for foreign aid. General Sanjurjo, supposed to lead the nationalists, dies in a plane crash on July 20th, and this allows Franco to present himself as the rebels' principal general to the two states most likely to aid his cause, Benito Mussolini's Italy and Adolf Hitler's Germany. By July 27th, both Mussolini and Hitler have agreed to send planes for the first military airlift in history. By the end of September, Franco has moved 16,000 troops. The Republic does little to counter this, and then, in another miscalculation, abandons its naval blockade. The rest of the Army of Africa can be ferried to the mainland. The Republican side finds international support a lot less forthcoming. Britain immediately declares strict neutrality and leans heavily on France to do the same. France does want to support the Republic, but can't afford to be isolated from Britain now that Germany is becoming an increasing threat. This, along with French conservatives launching a fierce campaign against any aid to the Republic, means that direct French intervention just isn't politically possible. But France also cannot afford to have an ally of Germany to its south. The solution? Propose a non-intervention agreement between the major powers so that the war can be fought with Spanish resources alone. By the end of August, all major powers, including Germany, Italy, and the USSR, have agreed to non-intervention. But it is a complete farce. Hitler and Mussolini barely make an effort to disguise their intervention. Both are keen to establish a friendly regime in southern Europe that will weaken both France and world communism. Mussolini is the more committed ally here, but Nazi leaders, notably Minister of Aviation Hermann Goering, are also very keen to use Spain as a testing ground for new methods of warfare. From November, Germany's airborne Condor Legion will play a role in every major battle of the war, rehearsing the strategies of terror bombing and air support.
So yeah, definitely this is a deadly dry run for World War II. It's a testing ground, you know, testing out their newest weapons, planes, tactics, on how to do things. And then at the start of World War II, on the 1st of September, you know, they will have already practiced on how to do things. They'll be ready. At the expense of Spanish civilians, infrastructure, and, you know, just the entire country. It's just a play place, you know, where they play with their best weapons and their best toys. Huh. Crazy.
of the war, rehearsing the strategies of terror bombing and air support. It is worth mentioning here, though, that contrary to popular perception, the Spanish Civil War will never be the place where the great powers actually fully develop their methods of warfare.
Oh, okay.
The conflict will bear disconcerting similarities with the global one that comes in September 1939, sure, but more on the levels of atrocity and violence rather than development of military doctrine. Anyhow, once the direct involvement of Italy and Germany becomes evident, the USSR also goes back on its promise. Joseph Stalin, too, recognizes the opportunity of establishing a friendly ally in Europe and authorizes a massive shipment of weapons, tanks, and planes with pilots to fly them. Perhaps the most important, or at least iconic, contribution from the Soviets is the establishment of international brigades, anti-fascist volunteers from outside of Spain. Recruitment begins in September, and around 35,000 people will volunteer for the cause. Most of them communists from Europe, but there is great diversity in who joins up. Unemployed workers and middle-class intellectuals alike travel to Spain.
What are you guys going to do there? You are not professional soldiers. You're just people who were picked off the street. I'm sure many of you didn't even know you were coming to Spain. This is crazy.
The poorly trained brigades will face high casualties, often being used as shock troops, but will become an iconic symbol of the conflict. So, foreign influence in the conflict is assured, and back in Spain, Franco is advancing on Madrid. Rather than a quick strike on the capital, he has been approaching slowly, brutally pacifying everywhere he passes. The final push on Madrid begins in mid-October. By this point, Franco has become the chief of nationalist Spain. He has outmaneuvered his potential rivals, well, the handful that are still alive and free, and on September 29th, the military junta declares him head of government. It only takes him a few days to refer to himself as head of state and begin crafting his image as the man destined to save Spain. There has also been a leadership change on the Republican side, though. Giral was forced to step down after so many defeats and is replaced by the socialist Francisco Largo Caballero on September 4th. And so, as leader of the nationalist forces, Franco drives on to the capital. Meanwhile, the Republican troops become more organized. The government moves to nearby Valencia. But Largo Caballero is committed to defending the capital and has already organized a united People's Army armed with Soviet weapons. The international brigades are also beginning to arrive, and posters spring up across the cities screaming the anti-fascist slogan of "No pasarán," they will not pass. The assault begins, though, on November 6, 1936. But dogged resistance and Soviet aerial superiority means that by the end of the month, Franco has achieved no breakthrough and taken heavy casualties. He summons reinforcements in December and January, still achieves little. He tries again in the early spring in 1937, but again fails. The defense of Madrid eliminates all chance for a swift end to the conflict. It will now settle into a bloody war of attrition. Franco decides to focus on conquering the northern Republican zone. Led by General Mola, this offensive begins in the Basque Country at the end of March 1937. It is here where the most infamous event of the war happens. On the afternoon of April 26, German and Italian aircraft carrying 60,000 pounds of high explosive and incendiary bombs fly to the small town of Guernica to destroy the bridge and the railway station there.
I'm surprised that the Air Force that the Russians have supplied to the Republican government have not intercepted the nationalist government supporters, the German and the Italian Air Force that have come into that region to bomb up the place. I'm quite surprised that they haven't attacked them. Or maybe, their orders were only to protect the capital city alone and defend it from any type of air attack or ground offensive. And then whatever left of the Republican territory, the Republican Spanish forces will have to deal with it themselves. Yeah, something like that maybe. I don't know.
The first two waves create so much smoke and dust that the following planes drop their loads blindly. Houses and public buildings are leveled, and fighter pilots strafe men, women, and children trying to escape. hundreds of innocent civilians are left dead, and much of the town is left in ruins. The raid captures international attention, especially after Pablo Picasso captures the bombing scene in one of his paintings. But foreign sympathy does not translate into foreign aid for the failing republic, as even the USSR is losing interest. The northern campaign continues after Guernica, and the republic can do little to stop it. Two attempts are made in May and June to divert nationalist attention. The first takes place just northwest of Madrid, and the second in Aragon. But both fail miserably, and the nationalists conquer all of Basque territory by June 19th. The last person to potentially challenge Franco's power, and the mastermind behind the initial coup, Emilio Mola, is also by now dead, perishing in a plane crash. While Franco's position has solidified, there is chaos in the Republican zone. In Barcelona, anarchist leaders have been gradually compromising ideological dogma and integrating into the Republican government. But a minority of them are against this and stage a rebellion on May 3rd. The May days see brutal street fighting among former allies and leave around 400 dead. The fighting eventually comes to an end on the 6th, and the anarchists continue their collaboration with the Republic. But it shows how quickly a popular front can come apart.
Yeah, I mean, they almost unraveled each other at the scene right there. And if they were, in this infighting for a longer period of time, the nationalists would have taken advantage of that situation. And I think they still are going to take an advantage, because clearly the nationalist government center is not holding. They're fighting amongst each other. They're killing each other when they should be directing all of that energy in defending their Republican government from the nationalists.
It also contributes toward Largo Caballero losing his job as prime minister, being replaced by Juan Negrin. He will be the last Republican leader of Spain, as the nationalist advance becomes unstoppable. More attempts are made to stem the tide. The Battle of Brunete in July, and then an offensive in Aragon in August and September, both see early success, but nationalists still fight them back, inflicting heavy casualties upon the increasingly demoralized Republican army. By the end of October, Franco has conquered the north, and with Valencia now less secure, the Republican government moves to Barcelona. December then sees another Republican counterstrike, this time inside and around the city of Teruel. Again, they see early success, but Franco is determined to crush all resistance, especially now that his fascist backers are growing tired of the endless fight and pushing him to achieve a quick victory. The fighting continues into the new year, eventually resulting in Republican defeat in late February. And 1938 will only see more defeats for the Republicans. The now dominant nationalist navy has blockaded their ports, meaning that Soviet shipments have to be smuggled across the border. The quality of these arms are inferior to Germany's and Italy's, and the USSR is, as I said, losing interest as it becomes more focused on other international concerns. Republican Spain is even split in two not long after Teruel, with a nationalist assault in Aragon and a drive down to the Mediterranean. In mid-July, the Republic will launch its last offensive of the war at Ebro in an attempt to reconnect its two halves. The battle is grueling and it's bloody, with deadly shootouts in the hilly terrain. Meanwhile, the last of the international brigades have left Spain. Their numbers and their effectiveness have been dwindling anyhow, and Negrin hopes that by ordering their repatriation, it will pressure Italy and Germany to also step back. The final volunteers have one last parade through the streets of Barcelona in October to huge public applause, but it is becoming increasingly apparent to everyone who is going to win the war. The People's Army is finally defeated at the Battle of Ebro in mid-November, taking 20,000 dead and 55,000 wounded and captured. It was the Republic's last gasp. They have very little left with which to fight. Refugees are flooding cities that face constant aerial bombardment and artillery shelling. Food shortages and other economic woes are endemic, and political conflict is becoming increasingly bitter. But under influence from the communists, Negrin is insistent that resistance must continue at all costs.
At all costs. Okay.
But he is being increasingly challenged, and the remaining willpower of the Republic is tested one more time, with Franco launching his final assault. He begins a massive offensive on Catalonia in December and reaches the outskirts of Barcelona by the end of January 1939. Civilians and soldiers alike inside the bombed out and starved city are so demoralized that many just choose to flee. So tens of thousands of refugees, including the escaping government, clog the roads leading to France. Barcelona falls to the nationalists January 26. Despite his government falling apart all around him, Negrin returns to Spain on February 10th and works on gathering resistance, but...
Is this guy brave or is he stupid? He could be assassinated or, just killed.
It is a hopeless task, and he is losing supporters by the day. France and Britain officially recognize Franco as the legitimate head of government on February 27th. Ironically, the Spanish Civil War will end the same way it began. Tired of Negrin's stubbornness, Republican military leaders stage a coup on March 5th and establish an anti-communist junta to negotiate with the clearly victorious Franco. Negrin finally realizes it is over and flees back to France. Fighting continues in the Republican zone, with some committed anti-fascists refusing to give in, but it is futile. Nationalist forces enter Madrid March 27th. Franco declares the war to be over 4 days later. The Spanish Civil War has been a catastrophic conflict and a warning about the future of total warfare. Terror bombing and the blurring of lines between civilians and combatants. Nihilistic resistance in the face of all odds, ideological hatred, and the dehumanization of adversaries. In just a few months, this will happen all over again, only this time on a global scale never seen before. Together with Paradox Interactive, who produced the Hearts of Iron games,
and Stellaris,
we did 2 alternate reality what-if scenarios that are related to the Spanish Civil War a little while ago, and they're both very good. Check out the first one of them right here. Time Ghost Army Member of the Week is Emil Dota Bak. It is because of people like Emil that we can continue giving you in-depth historical coverage like this. So be like him, join the Time Ghost Army, patreon.com or timeghost.tv. Link is in the description. And if those cannibals keep trying to sacrifice us to their pride, they soon shall hear the bullets flying. We'll shoot the generals on our own side. No pasarán.
Okay guys, that's it with the deadly dry run for World War II, the Spanish Civil War between two wars, 1939, part 1 of 3 by Time Ghost History. Yeah, this dry run, this deadly dry run for World War II, it just shows, the kind of zealousy, if I can say, for those who believe in different ideologies, and how far are they willing to take their ideology as being the alpha and omega in their lives, and such it should be the alpha and omega in their society, and how other governments across the world, or should I say mainly in Europe, would also use this civil war between peoples of Spain, as their own dry run testing bed for their own potential activities in future wars to come, and how the Spanish people were essentially being used also by these major powers, Russia, Germany, Italy, using them, pushing their own ideologies in that country, seeing who would dominate, whether it would be the nationalist government or it would be the Republican government, and the people on the ground are also just being used, just for these powerful men and their ambitions to become the leader of the country, or to have the country be ruled under a certain type of ideology. And the people in Spain, they had their ways of doing things. They wanted what they wanted. Those who wanted to follow a nationalist ideology kind of government, they were there. Those who wanted the Republican style of government, they were there too. You know, this was something that should have been fought amongst each other without any interference, you know, from the international community. I think Britain's decision on this matter might have been the correct one. Not taking sides. Don't take sides in something like this. Let the people deal with it themselves. Let's see what happens. But of course, when it comes to France and, you know, the potential of a nationalist government right next door to them, they have to be dealing with them, and they have to be dealing with the Germans, who are also like a nationalist you know, Reich government. And then of course you also have Italy down south. You know, it might be a problem for them, but essentially I think I'm with the British here. Like, you know, don't interfere in something like this. You can try and have like conversations, you know, like a dialogue between these two factions. Let's try and find a better way, without using weapons, without killing each other, without destroying places of worship, without killing people, you know, who just believe in something that you don't believe in. You know, let's try and find peace instead of going to war. You know, I think that would have been something that Britain should have further pushed on, like a negotiated settlement of some sort. But I agree with them. Taking sides in this battle would have really not been a very good thing. And yeah, you know, this really was like a dry test bed for what is to come. And yeah, it's just terrible, really. It's just horrible how many people just died simply because of what they believed in. You know, what kind of government they would want to be led by, what kind of society they would want to live in, and they were killed for that. Okay guys, I guess that's it for today with Time Ghost History Between Two Wars. Remember, if you want to check out the original video as well as Time Ghost History's YouTube channel, the links are in the description below. If you like my reaction, please give me a like, comment, and subscribe to my channel. Click on the notification bell if you want to be up to date with my latest videos, and I will see you guys next week. Okay, bye bye.